The market on the outer rim was louder than a storm, voices rising like thunder, mixed with the metallic clank of cages, buyers shouting bids and sellers calling out prices. The air was heavy with dust, sweat, and fear. Here, beings of all kinds were sold like animals. Daniel walked through the market with a calm face. He was just a human trader, carrying small goods to sell. He had been here before, and he never liked this place. But business was business. Humans were rare in this sector. Most ignored him. Some mocked him, but he didn't care. As he passed one cage after another, he saw weak figures, broken slaves, and eyes that had lost all hope. He tried not to look. He had told himself many times he would never get involved, but that day was different, because in the center of the auction square stood a cage unlike the others. Inside the cage was a tall figure, chained but not broken. Her skin had a faint shimmer under the harsh lights. Her eyes burned like fire, and even though her clothes were torn, she stood straight like a queen refusing to bow. The seller's voice rose above the crowd. "Behold, the warrior princess of the shattered Kareth Empire, stronger than any soldier, dangerous if left free, but yours to command if you have the courage. Who will bid for this rare prize?" The crowd erupted in laughter. Some shouted insults. Others joked that she was too wild to tame. No one wanted to waste credits on a fighter who might slit their throat in the night. The auctioneer tried again, lowering the price, but still no hands were raised. Daniel stopped, his eyes fixed on her. She noticed him too. Their gazes met through the bars. Hers was not the gaze of a slave. It was the gaze of a warrior who had lost everything, but still carried pride. She looked at him with silent challenge, as if daring him to look away. He should have walked, he told himself. This was none of his business. She was trouble, more trouble than he could ever handle. But his feet refused to move. Something inside him whispered that if he left, her fire would be crushed forever. The auctioneer shouted again. "Come on, she is fierce, she is strong. Someone must have the courage to take her. Who will bid?" Silence, then Daniel raised his hand. The crowd gasped. Whispers spread quickly. "A human? Did you see that? He is bidding on her." Some laughed loudly. "Foolish human, he will be dead in a day." Others shook their heads, thinking he had lost his mind. The auctioneer's eyes lit up with greed. Finally, someone had taken the bait, sold. To the human trader. The cage was unlocked, the warrior princess was dragged out. Still chained, her eyes never leaving Daniel's. When the chains were placed in his hands, the weight felt heavier than metal. It felt like he had just changed the course of his life. She stood tall in front of him. Even in chains, she carried herself with pride. "You are a fool." "Human," she hissed in a voice low but sharp. "You think you own me, but I will never kneel, not for you." "Not for anyone." Daniel didn't answer. He only looked at her for a long moment, then he said quietly, "I didn't buy you to own you." Her eyes narrowed. Confused by his words, before she could ask more, the guards pushed them away. The deal was done, the papers signed, and the crowd went back to mocking other victims. As Daniel guided her toward his small ship, whispers followed them. Bets were already being made on how long he would survive. Some said a day, others said an hour. No one believed he could control her. On the walk, she pulled hard at her chains, testing his strength, expecting fear. But he didn't flinch, he didn't hit her, he didn't shout. He simply held firm. His calmness puzzled her more than his foolish decision. When they reached his ship, she paused at the ramp, her eyes scanning it. Then she laughed bitterly. "This is your vessel? Small, weak like you? You think you can hold me here?" Daniel looked back at her, his voice steady. "If you want to leave, you can try, but out there, the hunters will find you, inside at least. You have a chance." She stared at him, uncertain whether he was mocking her or telling the truth. She hated the feeling of doubt, hate mixed with a strange flicker of curiosity. Why was this human different? As the ship's engines roared to life, the market faded behind them, the stars opened ahead, and in the silence of space, the warrior princess sat in her chains, burning with anger, pride, and confusion. While Daniel piloted the ship, his mind heavy with questions, he didn't know why he had done it, why he had risked everything for her. But deep down he knew one thing. This was not the end of a story. This was the beginning, and neither of them had any idea how much their lives were about to change. The hum of the ship filled the silence, a steady sound that wrapped around the small cabin like a cage of its own. The warrior princess sat on the floor, her chains still locked tight around her wrists, her golden eyes burning holes into the back of the human who sat calmly at the controls. She hated silence. Silence meant thinking, and thinking meant remembering. She remembered her throne, her soldiers, The roar of battle when her empire still stood. She remembered betrayal, chains, and finally the humiliation of being paraded like an animal in the market. She clenched her fists until the cuffs cut her skin. The human finally spoke, his voice calm, steady, too calm. "There's food in the galley if you want it," she laughed. But it was not a laugh of joy, it was sharp and bitter. "Do you think I would eat your scraps, human? Do you think chains will make me beg?" Her words were spit like venom, her pride like a blade. Daniel turned slowly, his face without fear. Without anger, he only shrugged. "Starve if you want, I don't care. But it's there if you need it." Then he turned back to the controls, as if she were no threat at all. Her jaw tightened. She had expected fear, or at least anger. She had expected him to strike her down like other masters would, but instead he gave her indifference. That insult burned deeper than any wound. Hours passed, she pulled at the chains, tested the ship's doors, scanned for weaknesses. Daniel had tied nothing else, he hadn't locked her in a cell. She was free to move inside the ship. Except the chains that clung to her. It made no sense. Why would he leave her like this? Finally, hunger twisted her stomach. Her pride screamed at her not to move, but her body betrayed her. She stood, her chains rattling, and moved to the galley. There on the table was a plate of warm food. Plain, simple human food, no poison, no tricks, just food. She stared at it for a long time. Daniel didn't even turn to look. He acted as if it didn't matter whether she ate or not. Her pride and her body fought. Finally, hunger won. She snatched the food and ate with quick, angry bites, her chains clanging with each motion. When she was done, she threw the plate on the floor. It shattered into pieces. She glared at Daniel, waiting for him to react, to punish her, to shout. But he only said in the same calm voice, "Next time, just put it in the sink." That simple reply made her more furious than any chain. She stormed forward, her eyes blazing, her muscles tense. In one sudden move, she leapt at him, her chains swinging like weapons. She expected panic, she expected him to fall. But Daniel rose from his chair and caught her wrist in midair, his grip strong, unshaking. His other hand blocked her strike with ease. His eyes locked on hers, not with hate, not with fear, but with something she did not understand. "Stop," he said quietly, like he was speaking to a storm. "I'm not your enemy," she growled, trying to twist free, but his strength held. It was not the strength of chains or cruelty. It was steady, unbreakable. She froze, staring into his eyes, expecting him to strike back, but he didn't. Finally, she pulled away, breathing heavy, her chest rising and falling with fury. She turned and stepped back, her eyes wide with confusion she would never admit. "Why don't you fight me?" she snapped, her voice shaking with rage. "Why don't you show me the cruelty humans are known for?" Daniel sat back down, brushing dust from his hands. "Because I didn't buy you to fight you." His words cut through her pride like a blade. She wanted to laugh, to scream, to deny it. But something deep inside stirred, something she had buried long ago, doubt. For the first time since her capture, she felt her anger falter. Only for a moment, then she forced it down. She would not show weakness, not before a human, not before anyone. That night when Daniel slept in the pilot's chair, she sat in the shadows, her chains heavy on her wrists, her mind burning with questions. Why had he done this? What was his game? What did he want? She whispered her name softly, so quiet even the ship could not hear it, her true name, the one her people had once chanted on the battlefield. Then she clenched her teeth and fell silent again. He didn't deserve her name, not yet, but still. The sound of it in the dark reminded her of who she was. Not a slave, not a prize, but a princess, a warrior, and she would never forget it. As the ship drifted through the endless stars, two lives sat inside, bound together by chains. Silence, and questions neither dared to answer. The fire of her fury still burned, but somewhere in that fire, a spark of curiosity had begun to grow, and though she didn't know it yet, that spark would change everything. The ship drifted through endless dark, its lights glowing faint against the stars inside. Silence stretched between human and alien, heavy like invisible chains. The warrior princess sat at the edge of the cabin, her wrists still bound, her golden eyes fixed on Daniel. She had tested him with hunger, with rage, even with attack. Yet he had not broken. He had not shouted, not struck. He was calm, always calm. She hated that calm. It felt like a wall she could not climb. She wanted him to reveal weakness, to show fear, anything, but instead, he only moved through the ship like a man who carried no fear at all. One day when Daniel stepped into the cargo bay to check supplies, she followed, her chains dragging across the floor. He turned to look at her, his voice steady. You need something? Her lips curled into a sharp smile. Yes. I need to know if you bleed. Without warning, she lunged, her chains swinging like blades. Her strength slammed forward with the force of a storm. Daniel caught the chain mid-air, his arm straining but holding firm again. He said softly, almost tired, not angry, not afraid. Her fury rose higher. She twisted, kicked, and forced her weight against him. The cargo bay echoed with metal clashing against metal. She expected him to stumble, to break, but he didn't. His body moved with practiced control. Every block precise, every step balanced. For a moment, their struggle looked like a dance. Her chains flashing, his arms steady. She was fire. He was stone. Finally, she swung hard, aiming for his throat. But he stepped aside at the last second. The chain hit the wall, sparks flew. In that instant, he pushed forward, his shoulder pressing her back against the wall. Her arms trapped, she hissed, breathing fast. Her eyes wide, her pride wounded. Finish it then, human, strike me down. You won't be the first, but Daniel did not strike. His voice was calm, almost sad. Why would I kill you? You're not my enemy. Her heart thumped hard in her chest. Confusion tangled with anger. She searched his eyes, looking for lies, but she saw none. Only a strange truth that unsettled her more than chains ever could. He stepped back, releasing her. Giving her space, she stumbled forward, caught off guard. Warriors were not given freedom after defeat. Enemies were not spared. This was not how battles ended. Why? She asked, her voice breaking through her anger. Why don't you fight me? Why don't you treat me like the others? Daniel turned away, checking the cargo crates as if nothing had happened. Because I didn't buy you to fight or break you. I only want you to survive. His words cut deep. Sharper than any blade, she hated how they made her chest tighten, how they reminded her of voices long lost, voices of her people, of her father, of her soldiers who once swore to protect her that night. When Daniel slept again in the pilot's chair, she sat near the window, her chains cold against her skin. She whispered to herself, barely audible, "My name is Solara." The sound of her own name after so long shook her. It was a piece of her identity she had hidden, a secret she guarded with pride. She had given it to no one since her capture, not even in whispers, but now she had spoken it aloud. Not for Daniel to hear, but for herself, to remind herself she was still alive, still more than chains. As days passed, she began to notice small things. Daniel repaired the ship's controls with skill. He cooked simple meals and left them for her without demand. He treated her not as a slave, not as a weapon, but as a passenger, an equal, though he never said the word. Her fury did not vanish, but it began to shift. Each clash with him showed her he was strong, not because of violence, but because of restraint. That strength was alien to her, and it unsettled her more than battle. One evening, when he handed her water, she took it without snapping, without throwing it to the floor. She drank, then met his eyes just for a moment before turning away, her pride fighting against something new growing inside her. Daniel didn't smile, didn't comment. He simply returned to his seat, and for the first time, silence between them did not feel like chains. It felt like something waiting to break. She sat in her corner, her mind a storm, her heart heavy, her pride wounded but not destroyed. She knew this human was not like the others, but she could not yet accept why. And deep inside, though she would never admit it, she wanted to know what he truly saw in her. The clash was not just of chains and strength anymore. It was of pride and kindness, of fury and calm, of two souls testing each other. Neither of them knew it yet. But this clash was only the first, the beginning of something far greater than war or chains. The stars stretched endless beyond the ship's window, cold and quiet, yet inside the small vessel, tension moved like fire under the surface. Daniel sat at the controls, his eyes steady on the path ahead. But his mind restless. Behind him, the alien princess, Solara, sat against the wall, her chains loose now, not locked as tightly as before. He had begun to trust her, though he never said it out loud. She noticed every small act, and it confused her more than battle ever had. For days she had tested him, fought him, cursed him, yet he did not break. He did not strike back, he only endured, calm as a mountain, and now, for the first time, she felt her pride shift, her anger soften, just slightly. One evening, when the engines hummed low and the galaxy outside glowed with distant light, Daniel spoke, his voice steady but quiet. "You never told me why they called you a princess." Solara froze, her eyes narrowing, her pride rising like armor. "Because I was born to rule, human. Because my bloodline held empires." Her voice was sharp, But there was pain beneath it. Daniel did not turn. He only said, "And yet they sold you like a caged beast." The word struck her. Her fists clenched. She wanted to rage, but the truth cut deeper than her fury. She lowered her eyes, her voice breaking softer. "My empire is gone." For a long moment, silence filled the cabin. The hum of the ship the only sound. Then slowly she spoke again. "My people were strong, proud, warriors across the stars, but power breeds enemies. The council betrayed me. They feared my bloodline. They struck alliances in the dark one by one. My generals fell. My fleets burned. I was captured, chained, paraded before those I once commanded." Her eyes glistened, though she forced back the tears. "And now I am nothing but a name whispered at an auction." Daniel finally turned, his eyes meeting hers. No pity, no mockery, only a quiet weight. "You are still alive," he said simply. Those words, so plain, so small, struck her harder than a blade. She had expected pity, or false comfort, but instead, he gave her something she had forgotten. Reminder alive, yes, she was alive. Her pride had kept her from seeing it before she could answer. The ship's console beeped sharply. Daniel leaned forward, scanning the display, his eyes narrowing. "We've got company." Solara stood, her chains rattling. "Hunters?" The scanner showed 2 ships fast, moving closer, their signals flashing red. Bounty marks. Solara's blood turned cold. Her past had found her. "They will not stop. They want me dead." Or worse, Daniel began switching controls, his voice calm. "Then we outrun them." Solara stepped forward, her eyes burning. "No, human. You don't understand. These hunters are not fools. They will chase us across sectors, and when they catch us, they will burn us both." Daniel didn't flinch. "Then we fight." Her eyes widened, shock mixing with disbelief. "You would fight for me? You don't even know me. You should hand me over, sell me. Take your credits and live." But Daniel's voice was steady as stone. "I didn't buy you to sell you, Solara." Her heart thumped hard. That name, her true name, falling from his lips like a vow. She hadn't told him. Yet he had listened when she whispered it in her sleep. He remembered outside the hunters closed in, their lights flashing like predators in the dark. Solara's fury turned into something else, something sharper. She stepped closer. "Then give me a weapon, human, if you want to live through this." "You will need more than calm words." Daniel opened a crate, pulling out an old human rifle, worn but strong. He tossed it to her. Her hands caught it with practiced ease. Her chains clanged, but her grip was steady. For the first time since her capture, she felt fire return. Not the fire of rage, but of purpose. She stood beside him, her eyes fixed on the approaching ships. "Then let us see if humans bleed," she said, but this time her voice carried no hate. Only challenge. Daniel gave a faint smile. "You'll see." The ship shook as the hunters fired the first shots. Alarm screamed, metal groaned. Solara braced herself. The storm of her past had finally reached them, and now, for the first time, she and the human would stand together. She no longer cared if he was weak or foolish. What mattered now was survival. And deep inside, a spark whispered, maybe he was not weak at all. Maybe he was exactly the ally she had never expected. As fire lit the dark space around them, Solara's heart beat faster. Her past had found her, but for the first time, she did not face it alone. The first blast shook the ship like thunder. Lights flickered, alarms screamed, and the smell of burning wires filled the cabin. Daniel gripped the controls. Forcing the small vessel into a sharp dive, the hunters closed in, their sleek ships flashing red like hungry wolves. Solara steadied her stance, the old human rifle in her hands, her golden eyes blazing, chains still clinging to her wrists, yet her body radiated power. She had been a warrior before chains, before betrayal, and the fire inside her rose again. "They are circling us," she said, her voice hard. "They will try to board. They want me alive." Daniel's jaw tightened, his hands moving over the controls. "Then we make sure they regret it." The hunters fired again, the blast smashing against the shields. Sparks rained from the ceiling. The ship groaned under the force. Solara braced herself, the rifle clutched tight. A sharp alarm sounded, grappling hooks, metal claws digging into the hull. The hunters were reeling them in, pulling the small ship like prey into the mouth of a predator. Solara's lips curled into a bitter smile. "They want a fight. They will have one." The airlock hissed. Heavy footsteps echoed through the narrow corridor. Shadows moved on the other side of the door, armored hunters armed with blades and rifles. Mercenaries who killed for credits. Daniel grabbed a second weapon, a small pistol, old but reliable. He stood at the door, calm as ever. Solara looked at him, puzzled even in the chaos. You face them without fear, human. Are you mad or brave? He glanced at her, his voice steady. Maybe both. The door burst open, fire erupted. Solara moved first, her chains rattling as she leapt forward. The rifle roared, her aim sharp. 2 hunters fell before they even crossed the threshold. Daniel fired beside her, his shots clean, precise, each one dropping an enemy. The corridor filled with smoke, screams, and the clash of steel. Solara swung her chains like whips when the rifle emptied, striking one mercenary across the helmet, shattering his visor. She grabbed his blade, twisting it free, and drove it into his chest. Daniel ducked under another strike, his pistol firing point blank. The enemy crumpled, blood staining the metal floor. The hunters pressed hard, but Solara and Daniel moved as if they had fought together for years. Her fury like fire, his calm like stone. Together they were unshakable. One mercenary lunged for Daniel, but Solara blocked the blow, her blade flashing. "Not him," she growled, her voice sharp like thunder. "You face me." She drove the blade through the mercenary's armor, pulling it free in a spray of sparks. Daniel glanced at her, surprised but didn't speak, only kept firing. Their backs against each other now. Holding the narrow corridor, minutes felt like hours. But finally the last hunter fell. Silence echoed through the smoke. Only the hum of the ship and the heavy sound of their breathing filled the space. Solara stood tall, her chest rising and falling, her chains dripping with blood and oil. Her golden eyes fierce, she turned to Daniel, her voice low. "You fight like a soldier, not a traitor." Daniel wiped sweat from his brow, reloading his pistol. "I fight when I have to." Her gaze lingered on him, sharp, searching, but she said nothing more. Instead she looked at the fallen hunters, their armor scattered, their bodies broken. Her lips pressed tight. "They will not stop. More will come," Daniel nodded. "Then we keep moving. Always ahead." Solara lowered her weapon, but her voice carried a weight. "You should have handed me over. You could have lived without this trouble." Daniel met her eyes, his voice quiet but strong. "I told you. I didn't buy you to sell you." Her chest tightened, his words stirring something she did not want to admit. Something beyond pride, beyond anger. It was trust, a feeling she had thought dead. For a long moment silence hung between them, the bodies around them a grim reminder of the cost. Yet inside her, something shifted for the first time since her capture. She felt she was not fighting alone. Solara lowered her head slightly, not in defeat, but in something close to respect. "Then hear me, human. I am Solara of the Kareth bloodline. Warrior of the fallen empire, I do not kneel, but I will stand beside those who earn it." Daniel gave a faint nod. "Then stand beside me." Outside, the wreck of the hunter ships drifted, their fire fading into the void. But more would come. Solara knew it. Daniel knew it. Their battle was not over. It had only begun. Yet as they prepared the ship to fly again, Solara felt something she had not felt in years. Not since her empire fell, not since her people were scattered. Hope. And that hope burned brighter than her chains, brighter than the shadows of her past. For the first time, she believed a new future might be possible. The ship floated in silence after the battle, the bodies of hunters drifting in the void, their broken ships glowing faint with dying fire. Daniel guided the vessel away, his hands steady on the controls, though the weight of what just happened pressed heavy on his chest. Solara sat across from him, her chains smeared with blood and ash. Her golden eyes still fierce, but inside them was something different now. Not just fury, not just pride, something deeper, something he had not seen before. For a long time neither spoke, the hum of the engines the only sound. Finally Daniel stood and moved to repair a burnt panel, his hands working quietly. Solara watched him, her jaw tight, her heart restless. At last she broke the silence, her voice low, steady. "You could have let them take me. You could have escaped this fight. But you didn't." Daniel didn't look up. "I told you before. I don't sell people." Her eyes narrowed. "But you risked your life for me, a stranger. A so-called princess with nothing left. Why?" Daniel paused, then finally met her gaze. "Because no one deserves to be chained." Her chest tightened, the words hitting her harder than the battle, harder than the betrayal of her counsel. She wanted to argue, to laugh, to push the feeling away, but the truth was too sharp. She rose slowly, her chains dragging, each step deliberate. She stood before him, taller, proud, but her eyes softer than before. "Among my people," she said quietly, "when a warrior saves another's life, when they stand together against death, There is an oath, it is not given lightly, it is not broken. It binds blood to blood. Daniel tilted his head, curious. And what does that mean? She took a deep breath, her voice strong now, echoing with the weight of tradition. It means I am bound to you. Human, not as a slave, not as a prize, but as a warrior who owes loyalty, as one who stands beside another until death. Daniel frowned, shaking his head. I don't need loyalty, Solara. I just want you to choose your own path. Her eyes burned with intensity. And I choose this. I choose to stand with you. Because you fought when you didn't have to. You gave me back something I thought lost. You gave me hope. Her voice cracked on the last word, but she did not lower her gaze. For the first time, Daniel saw not just a warrior, not just a princess, but someone broken who refused to shatter, someone who carried scars deeper than chains. He sighed softly. If that's your choice, then I won't stop you. But don't follow me because of some old oath. Follow because it's what you want. Solara nodded once, sharp and sure. Then hear my words. She lowered to one knee, her chains clinking against the floor. She placed her fist against her chest, her voice strong, ancient, filled with tradition. I, Solara of Kareth, bloodline warrior of a fallen empire, swear my blade, my strength, and my life to the human Daniel. Until my last breath, this is my oath. This is my vow. Daniel stared at her, stunned. The sight of a proud alien princess kneeling before him like this shook him more than the hunters ever could. He opened his mouth to argue, but the fire in her eyes told him this was no game, no weakness, this was real. Slowly he nodded. Then I accept your vow, but remember, I never wanted a servant. I only wanted you to be free. Solara rose, her head held high, the chains rattling like fading ghosts. Then let my freedom be to fight at your side. The cabin felt different after that. The silence no longer heavy but alive, charged with something unspoken later. As Daniel worked to fix the damaged systems, Solara sat close, watching, not with suspicion but with quiet curiosity. Every move he made seemed strange to her, so calm, so patient, so human. Yet there was strength in it she had never known. When the repairs were done, Daniel leaned back, exhausted. Solara placed a hand on the rifle resting by her side, her eyes steady. More hunters will come, more enemies. My past will not let me go. Daniel gave a tired smile. Then we'll face them together. For the first time, Solara smiled faintly. Not mockery, not rage, but something rare, fragile, yet real. Together, she repeated, and the word felt strange on her tongue, but not unwelcome. The stars outside burned bright, endless, full of danger, but inside the small ship, a new bond had been forged, stronger than chains, stronger than fear. The oath was made, and from that moment, Solara was no longer just a prisoner in Daniel's ship. She was his ally, his warrior, his shadow in the fight ahead. Neither of them knew how far this vow would carry them. But deep in her heart, Solara knew one truth. For the first time since her empire fell, she was not alone. The ship drifted into a quieter sector of space. Far from the wreckage of the hunters, the stars burned steady, endless, as if nothing in the galaxy had changed. But inside the small vessel, everything had. Daniel sat at the controls. His face tired but calm, Solara stood near the window, her golden eyes tracing the star lines. Her chains now removed, lying in the corner like dead snakes, her wrists free for the first time in what felt like ages. She touched the faint scars left by the metal, her jaw tight but her heart lighter. She remembered the auction, the laughter, the humiliation, and she remembered the human who had raised his hand. Not to own her, but to save her. Daniel broke the silence, his voice steady. You're free now, Solara. You can go where you want when we reach the next station. Her head snapped toward him, her eyes fierce. Is that what you think I want? To run, to hide in shadows? She stepped closer, her voice low but strong. I swore my oath, human, I don't break it. Not for anyone. Daniel looked at her, not with surprise, but with something deeper, respect, I know. But I won't chain you to me with words. You deserve to choose your own future. Her chest tightened at his words. Simple yet sharp, he didn't understand. He had already given her that choice. And she had chosen. She crossed her arms, her voice calmer now. Then hear me again, I choose this. I choose to fight beside you, not as a slave, not as a debt, but because you are worth it. The words felt strange, leaving her lips soft where once there had only been fury. But they were true. She had seen his strength, not in violence but in restraint, not in power but in kindness, and it had changed her more than any battle. The ship's console beeped, pulling Daniel's attention. A transmission flashed across the screen, a warning. Bounty doubled. Hunters spreading the signal across systems. Her face marked as prey, his name now tied to hers. Silara's eyes narrowed. They are afraid. They fear what happens if I live, if I rise again. She looked at him, her jaw firm. They will never stop, not until I am gone. Not until you are gone. Daniel leaned back in his chair, his voice calm as ever. Then we don't let them win. For a long time, she studied him. A man with no throne, no empire, no army. Just a small ship and a will stronger than steel. And yet she believed him. More than she had believed generals or kings. Later, when the ship settled into quiet flight, Silara walked to the corner where her chains lay. She picked them up, heavy, cold reminders of her fall. She carried them to the airlock, her fingers pressing the release. Daniel turned at the sound, watching silently. As the chains slid out into the void, swallowed by the stars, gone forever, she stood tall, her back straight, her voice steady. Those chains do not define me anymore. She turned to him, her golden eyes bright. From now on I walk free. But I walk with you. Daniel gave a faint smile. Tired but real. Then welcome aboard. The words were simple, but to her they meant more than any crown. More than any empire, it was acceptance, it was belonging. Days turned into weeks as they traveled deeper into uncharted space. They faced dangers, pirates, broken systems, storms of radiation, but each time, they stood together. Her blade and his will, her fire and his calm. Rumors began to spread in whispers across systems, of a human who had bought an alien princess but set her free, of a warrior princess once enslaved now standing again, of two unlikely allies carving their path through the stars. Some called it madness, others called it legend, but for Silara, it was something simpler. It was a new life, a chance to rise not as a ruler of a broken empire, but as herself. One night, as the stars drifted outside and the hum of the ship filled the quiet, Silara sat across from Daniel, her voice soft, almost hesitant. Do you regret it, buying me, taking this path? Daniel looked at her, his eyes steady. No, because if I hadn't, you wouldn't be here. And I think the galaxy needs you more than it knows. Her chest warmed at his words. She turned her gaze back to the stars, a rare smile touching her lips, small, fragile, but real. For the first time since her empire burned, Silara felt no chains, no cage, no shadow of betrayal, only the wide open galaxy before her, and at her side was a human who had given her not ownership, but choice, not pity, but respect, not chains, but freedom. Together, they stepped into the unknown, two lives bound not by fate, not by blood, but by choice, by loyalty freely given. The auction had been her end, she thought once, but now she knew. It had been the beginning. The future was theirs to write. And it would not be written in chains but in stars.